This is Tara McGinnis, and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive. This lesson is how to apply a crepe hair beard. However, one doesn't just simply apply crepe hair beards by themselves. You use them as part of a complete makeup. And so this will also be a complete makeup doing Vladimir Illych Ulanov, normally known as Lenin, the father of the Soviet Union. And I will include not only the crepe hair beard, but a revised version of wax nose and a middle-aged character makeup done reverse sex. So I'm going to do historical dead person makeup that will also include a crepe hair beard and a wax nose. So you can see how each of these lessons builds on one another. For a crepe hair beard, you use crepe hair. Crepe hair is in fact wool. Wool that has been formed into a little braid held together with strings that holds it in a position to make it curly. In order to use crepe hair for beard, you take it out of the little strings and stretch it out. If you want an extremely kinky beard, and most beards are not as extremely kinky as it will come straight out of the braid, but if you want an extremely kinky beard, you can just take it out, cut it, and use it as is. However, for most beards, what you want is neither one that's completely straight nor one that's completely kinky, but something partway between those two, because most beards have a little bit of curl to them, but are not completely Brillo pad kind of thing. So what you do is you take the strings and loosen them, and take the wool out of the braid, and then you run it either over a steam kettle, like so. There's a very elaborate thing that you can do where you get it wet and you tie it to two sticks and hold it to dry overnight. This is way more trouble than you ever need to go to. And if you have a steam iron, particularly the kind of industrial steam iron you have in theatrical costume shops, you simply go and stretch it out a bit and run the steam iron over it. I know any number of people who will tell you in makeup that if you do this, you will get a dreadful thing with your crepe hair beard. I've done this for years. My students have done it for years, and the results are quite lovely. So I think it's just a question of how practiced you are with the iron and whether or not you're using an industrial steam iron that puts a lot of steam into it, or something that's just a little home iron that you're ironing it till it's dead. You don't want to iron it till it's dead. You want to stretch it out a little bit, steam it, and just take a little bit of the kink out. And once you've gone and taken your crepe hair wool and stretched it out so that it has a little bit of kink left, but not too much, you then cut it off from the main braid, and you take little bits of it and make it into shorter pieces, which I will now do. To do this, you need scissors, and to affix it to your face, you will need spirit gum. Those are the most obvious ingredients that you need for a crepe hair beard in addition to your regular makeup. However, there are two other ingredients you need to remember for when you're doing a crepe hair beard that are in fact the most important things to making a successful crepe hair beard. They are a dry towel and a wet towel. The reason you need this is just as with the wax nose, you have to be cleaning your fingers between every step. You have to be cleaning the table that you're working at between every step. You have to go and get all the little extra fibers of the crepe hair wool and get it away from any part of your makeup and any part of things like nose wax or spirit gum, except when you're directly sticking it to your face, because this is wool, and once you cut it into small pieces, little tiny fibers of it will constantly be coming off. And they will try and climb into your makeup. They will try and get into the nose wax. they will go and get everywhere. So, what you need to do is to compartmentalize in your mind every little step you're doing, and between each step, you want to clean your fingers and clean your table with either the wet towel or the dry towel or both. You keep them on either side of you, and you use them to make sure that this stuff does not get everywhere, and that the spirit gum does not get everywhere. This is why, at this point, though I'm using colors for my makeup, they still have the lids on. I'm not going to even open that makeup until I have completely finished putting on the beard and doing all the steps necessary for that. So, the same thing for the nose wax. I don't want to go and have that have anything to do with what's happening with the beard, because the little bits of wool get everywhere. That is the most important thing to remember. So, the next thing is I will go and take this, and using scissors, I will cut it into short bits. Now, you don't really need to go and use very long bits. So for instance, if I wanted a beard that was this long, I would probably make these bits just a hair longer than that so I can trim. And this is a fairly short piece. This is about 1.5 inches, not quite 2 inches. And yet this will be much longer than I'll actually need, and I will trim it up. So you want short bits like this. And then you want to take each of those bits and break them off into very small sections, like so. And as you do that, all the little pieces of extra are going to try and come off. So you're going to take those and put them down on your table one at a time, and you're going to make the excess stuff go away. This is not something you want to do in the middle of your parents' living room. At least not unless you're very good about vacuuming afterwards, or your mother will kill you. Very messy. So, I'm going to take those little pieces. Actually, that one's too big. I'm going to take that, make that half again. And the reason you're doing this is both for wigs and for beards, if you want them to look realistic, you have to go and make sure that the most important thing is airspace. Beards, when they grow in lots and lots of little hair follicles out on your face, and they form into a very fluffy thing as a whole, but they're not like this. They're not thick. They're not all pulled together like a ponytail. They're actually very diffuse and very filled with air, which is one of the reasons that so many men up here in Alaska have a tendency to grow them in winter. It provides very nice face insulation because of all the airspace. So you're looking to go and form these into very small sections because you're going to put them fairly far apart and make it so that most of your beard is airspace. Once you've cut up your pieces into smaller pieces and spread them out into little tiny pieces like this, you're going to want to start putting spirit gum onto your face in small sections. Now, to do this, this is an example of something you really need to have a rendering before you do it. You want to know where you're going to be putting your spirit gum and how it's going to fit in with the makeup, because you want to be able to plan ahead for the parts that go on. Now, for a beard, most beards, they tend to grow from the center here and then move out and up. So you start here. If you have one that's fairly full underneath, you actually start at the point of the chin underneath and work up and out and out and out. But mostly you're just going to start right along there. For a mustache, it works the other way. It goes out here and moves in, because most people take their mustaches and push them to either side. That way they can grow them into strange little spirals like the man, Fred Meyer, who looks like Mr. Wogglebug, and the beards, on the other hand, get pulled in. So, because the direction of growth is that way, you're going to start out with spirit gum here and here. You want to put a fairly reasonable amount of that on, not so thick that it takes too long to dry, but not so little that it dries too fast for you to get along there. You then have the exciting thing of watching, well, not even watching paint dry, watching spirit gum dry, which is even more dull because you can't even see it like paint. It's just a little bit of shine that you're seeing on either side here, down here. Depending on the climate, you will find that it dries at different speeds. If you have a very hot, dry climate, it dries faster. If you have a cold, wet climate, it takes longer. It's not something that you can say, oh, well, it will always, 30 seconds later, be ready. You don't know that. However, you do feel it periodically. And once it becomes sticky, you have a very small window of time in which to go and stick on your hair. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I'm now going to do the next step, which is I'm going to spread the top end of it. If it gets uneven at the top when I'm doing that, I can also go and use the scissors to take a little bit of the edge off of that and put a piece here. Stick it into the goo. I now have goo-covered fingers, so it goes onto the wet towel. Next little piece of hair. My little piece of hair has bits that are falling off. I think I'm going to work on a bigger piece of hair. It doesn't have so much bits falling off. And I'm going to trim it a little. And it's already spread out. I'll put that here. Parts of that are not wanting to stick. I pull those off, and I use the wet towel to clean those parts off of my fingers. Pat it down again. Loose bits. You don't give it a full firm tug. If you give it a firm tug while it's still drying, it will simply come off. In fact, if you give a really firm tug to it, it'll come off once it's fully dried. That's in fact how you remove it at the end. So, you basically pull it off your face. So you're just trying to gently pull away the loose bits. And you're pushing them to either side. Now, as you can see here, the ends of the mustache are much longer than I'm actually going to do on Lenin, as he has a little short one that goes down to either corner of the mouth. However, because I'm cutting all the pieces in the same size, and I'm going to need the center pieces to go a bit further, I'm going to go and put on the pieces and then trim it after the fact. So you make it a little bit longer than you need. Don't do too much. So, next section, I'm going to go and do a bit more on the beard here. This time above on the chin, and on the mustache, the next row in. I can see here it's trying to stick to my fingers, the parts that came off. That's why I need the wet towel. Get those pieces off of my fingers so that they don't interfere with the other parts. Since his mustache does not go straight out, it goes a little bit angled up and down. I don't want to make it go straight in. I want to have the hair go at that kind of angle. Pulling loose bits. Cutting an angle. And cleaning the fingers between every single step. More spirit gum. Here's another problem you get. Little threads of the wool getting into the brush of the spirit gum. The second you see that, you want to go and pull it out. Because otherwise, when you apply the spirit gum the next time, it'll have that little piece on it, which will have become soaked in spirit gum and try flying on different parts other than the tip of your brush, because it's like an extension on the brush. Now, while you're doing a beard, one of the important things to remember is not only do you want the stuff to be fairly sparse, but in places where it's going to be very short. For instance, many people, Lenin included, would have a beard that had maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch hairs down here, and then around here it would be cut shorter so that it was a little like extra long 5 o'clock shadow. It was very short along the sides. On those short areas, what you're going to want to do is not do it with this stuff, since obviously you can't, with a significant portion of it sticking on, you can't make it that short. So what you're going to need to do is take those sections and use a stipple sponge or brushwork to go and suggest that. And this is one of the things that can actually make your beard much more convincing, plus make it so that you're spending less time and less of your face getting spirit gum and this itchy wool on it, because you can use the paint to blend the stylized paint of your makeup into the beard and give verisimilitude to the beard, even though it's made out of a fairly thin amount of the crepe hair. This is to follow the shape of the beard from Lenin's portrait sitting in the country next to Stalin. At this point, I now have the beard put in. As you can see, it's rather sparse. It isn't a lot of hair. You're just using the hair, as you were using with the nose and the wart and so on, to give a little bit of extra dimension to what you're doing. Because mostly what you're going to do for the beard is actually little brush strokes and bits of using a stipple sponge. So you're not actually trying to go and do the whole part of the beard. You're just trying to make the dimensional parts. So the next step is to go and trim it to shape. So on the tip of the beard, I'm not actually needing it that long. I'm going to do some big rough cuts just to shorten it. And then a little bit more delicate cutting to trim it. Okay. Now that is the crepe hair beard part of the lesson. Now, the next thing I do is I make sure that I get absolutely every bit of crepe hair off of this table and off of me, other than the part that's sticking on my face. Once I've done that, all of that is out of the way, then I work on the nose. And again, I want to go and put spirit gum over the part. Now sometimes when I do Lenin's nose, I don't even bother with the wax, because he's one that is close enough to my own nose that I can go and usually do it with paint. But I would like you to see a makeup that uses both of those things, nose and a beard. And still, there is a hair that has managed to work its way into the spirit gum. These little woolly hairs want to be everywhere. So I'm going to let that dry and take the wax has been kept out of the way of all possible bits of crepe here. And pull some out, same way I did for the witch nose. As you can see, it's very soft. It's formed into a mess. I'll pull that off of the end of my brush and form it into a little ball. My fingers. Parts of this have gone black. I don't know why. It's fresh nose wax. It's sticking to my fingers. Making it into a little ball. Put the ball down. Clean the fingers using the wet towel and the dry towel and the wet towel. Now, take the ball. What I'm mainly trying to do is widen and lengthen the nose very slightly. So, I'm going to make this into a little sausage. Like so. Clean my fingers again, and then apply the sausage to the spirit gum. Just sort of tucked it on. I haven't done anything exciting to it yet. Now, start pushing it into my face. There's something kind of funny about Lenin's nose. Lenin's nose is about average size, sort of median, a little wide, flat, longish, but not hooked or anything. Just sort of a wide, flat, not particularly large or particularly small Russian nose. And slightly rounded, not very angular features in the photos that you see of him. However, a lot of the images of Lenin were done as propaganda images, and were done after he died. And in Russian culture, a large nose is sometimes regarded somewhat the way a large shoe size is in America. That is to say, it connotes virility. And so you'll note in some of the ones done after his death that somehow all of his features become a bit sharper. And his nose, in particular, seems to get a bit bigger. So the sort of legendary status of Lenin gives him a somewhat sharper nose in his later renditions in art, as if after his death, when they didn't have the reality of Lenin facing them, they made a sort of alternate reality of him as the extra-virile father of the Soviet Union. So his nose gets sharper in the later images and seems a little bit larger. It's not enough of a change that it, is no longer recognizably him, but it is a bit stronger than you note in photographs. He also has a much more severe countenance in these later images, whereas when you see photographs of him he usually smiled for the camera. He has this very amiable face for somebody who sent that many people to gulags to die. Sort of go, why are you so happy? Yeah, somehow or another some black got into there. Don't know. So, here I've gone and added a little more late Lenin nose to it. For a fairly realistic makeup, as compared to the witch that has a nose that's not at all intended to be realistic. Now, I'm going to get the spirit gum off of my fingers and on to the next step, which is the actual makeup, which now I'm going to take the lids off, that there's no spirit gum, no icky anything to get into it. Now, I have chosen for my base something that is a little more sallow, because he had a somewhat more sallow complexion. And making that small concession to reality. And I'm going to put on the base. This time I'm using a cream makeup over the nose. So again, I'm putting it on the nose last. And I'm putting it near the beard, but I'm not really like working it in. What this means is if you're using a color that is extremely different from your face color, you are kind of stuck to put it down before you put down your beard, which makes it harder for the beard to stick. Which is one of the downsides to doing that. But this is close enough to my skin tone that it's not so obvious. Okay, now I'm going to take the base. This is a cream base, and I'm going to cover over the wax. Base. This time, instead of rubbing it on, I'm patting it on, just like I did the other one. And trying to get it in all the places there. So he's a little bit more yellowish looking than I am. He's been out in the sun in August mushrooming. Better portion of Russian government shuts down for August so that everybody can go mushrooming. Fun things. So, also using my highlight and shadow, I'm now going to paint in designs that are suggestive of what he looks like in photographs. A couple of things about his face are similar to my own. He has pretty close to the same eyebrows. The only difference is his go down. There's less space between here and here on him. So I'm going to end up needing to take that darkening effect that I have from doing this and making sure that I get that in on him. As it makes the eyebrows look lower. Little bit more that comes from the center here, like that. So. It connects those two, which is another thing that makes it so that the eyebrows appear a little bit lower toward the center. Now, more on the shadows. He also has this pleat thing. He has a more visible eyelid, though. So the pleat thing goes like this. And you have a bit of white that shows underneath. A visible eyelid is where you can see that fold in an eye, where you can see stuff. I have deep set eyes, which don't lend themselves to that. So I'm actually painting in something as though I've got that extra fold that he does have, or did. And a little bit of an age line running up. As I say, he smiled a lot for somebody who managed to kill that many people. And now this is a section of the face where I'm having to go and follow the lines of my own face and kind of ignore, to a certain extent, his. Because while he has bags under his eyes, they do not follow the exact same shape as mine do. But if I move mine too much, or even a little for where the bottom is, it's going to be a lot less convincing the moment I move my face. So can't do too much of that. I'm going to take this lower one away. Give it more. One that goes out straight. These tend to go out straighter than that. So, and kind of a indent here. Now, on the nose, has a bit of an indent up here. Not that much, but as I say, if I have a section like this on the nose that I know is going to crack anyway, and I have a reason that I can put a line there, which will help hide that crack when it occurs, so much the better. And he does have occasions in photos where you see a little line there. So I'm going with that. The other thing I'm going to do is the same thing that I would do if I were just using paint on the nose, is I'm going to make the nose wider by putting the shadow further out. There's a rather wide, flat nose, a little bit like a cat. So in addition to getting the more depth, I'm going to get a little bit more width. I think in the interest of making that more believable, I will squash this a bit more. That goes with it a bit better. Now, he has a bit more nostrils than I do. Well, you can't really make your nostrils bigger. You can't go and, well, you can do it with latex, but you can't go and do it with wax. It will just fall off because your nostrils move too much. However, you can make them appear more prominent by making sure to shadow the outer section and highlight the nostrils. That gives you a little bit more nostril. The other thing is he has larger nostrils than I do. So, in this case, I'm going to use the brown to make the nostrils bigger instead of the black, because I want this to look fairly realistic as a makeup. Big, so that it would read at a distance, but not in colors that are a little odd. So, Just making them slightly bigger. And shadowing even a little bit under there. So just having more highlight and shadow there makes it a bit larger.
You have a hair on your nose, Jen.
Oh dear. I have a hair. There we go. Yeah, it's
Profile.
okay.
Cool. Yeah, it's looking good.
Okay. Then, other things. I'm going to start putting in highlighter. His forehead tends to be really broad because he had male pattern baldness, so it creeps up there. I'm not going to shape my head, however, for this makeup. Sorry to disappoint you all. But I am going to give extra highlighter around here so that I can suggest that large forehead. Then I will use brush to put the highlighters into these spots for the fold of the eye, the fake extra white eyelid. I'm doing the area above the actual lid and making it, by being white, hopefully look a little bit more like I've got a visible eyelid. Not that you can really get a visible eyelid with my kind of eye, but I can suggest one. And the various lines there. And he has actually, of his eye bags, the most prominent thing is he has a really sharp pouch right here. Now, I'm going to use highlighter on the nose. I'm especially going to use it here to give it that extra width. A little bit on the center. I don't want to go too much through there. Now, another thing that he has that I don't have is he has really sharp, prominent cheekbones. So he gets a lot of highlight through here. Then, also some shadow here. Again, in this case, not only making for a sharp cheekbone, but almost a little permanent, like smiley thing like I've got here, but even sharper, less rounded and more like a smiley. Oh, and in the post-death of Lenin, yike! Where did that come from? I have no idea. Must be part of the eyebrow thing, but... Get that off. And... this. The very thing I'm using to clean the off is getting to me. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yes. One of the nice things for after Lenin's death, as I say, mostly in art, he gets much more severe looking. The exception to this is a picture that was in every basic primer school book in the Soviet Union. The sort of Russian equivalent of Dick and Jane, first reader, would have on the beginning of the book a happy, smiling Lenin, like so, with the phrase conjugated various ways as a way of showing grammar, saying, Lenin lived, Lenin lives, and Lenin will live forever. Phrases to show the different ways you use time in grammar in Russian. And it has this very amiable, smiling-looking Lenin in that one picture that was in every kid's school book, where he's looking like the friendly person who wants you to get better grammar. I found the black thing that's nailing me. It was the tooth wax from the last thing. Okay. Sorry, I'm hesitating here, but I can't remember where I am. Oh, yes. Nasolabial fold. He's got a pronounced nasolabial fold. Now, from here on down, I'm going to start putting in bits of beard that aren't there in the dimensional stuff. I'm going to put it in using a brush and short hair-like strokes in a combination of brown and black. If you're working on a beard or mustache and you have little sections that end up being just a little bald, don't worry about it too much. You can fill in. Also, if you are male and you want a beard for a role, and you have been dutifully trying to grow one in, and what you've got is something fairly sparse and it's not all there, or you're blonde or red-headed and it's there, but you can't really see it because it's too close to your skin color, you will find that you can go and make the most piddly little bits of hair on your face into something fairly decently full by putting in tiny lines like this. You can also use this to control the edges since crepe hair beards are kind of notoriously, the crepe hair sticks where it wants to stick, and will just decide to drop off at places where it doesn't, and that's the way it is. So you want to go and make nice, neat little edges. You make them with paint. And any place that's really thin underneath, you use a little extra paint. This is the point at which you guaranteed will get stuff in your brush. So after you do this, you're going to want to clean out lots of other things. And I realize I forgot my stipple sponge. So I'm going to run away. Stipple sponge. Sorry about that. Then so now I've put in most of the hairs. However, this looks a little too neat. And in actual fact, he had a little bit of very short hairs that came around through here in most of the portraits that you see of him. Of course, he changed his beard style from goatees to this, that, and the other thing. And just do one exact style all the time. But by going and putting in where I want the main edges to be, and then softening those edges slightly so that they look a little more natural. Stipple. And again, I'm using both the black and the brown in the stipple. To get that variety of color. Now, parts of his eyebrows are a little bit more prominent than mine. So I'm going to show another trick that's connected with messing about with hair. Which is you take a little bit of spirit gum, run it along your eyebrow, and then you use it to sort of back comb your eyebrow. Like this. And use spirit gum to stick your eyebrows down flatter, and you can also use it to go and make them a little bit fuzzier. That way you don't have to go and try and stick crepe hair eyebrows on. If you've got a little bit of hair there, you can just make it all stand up on end. So. Also, if you want to go and connect colors a little more, you can put in a little bit of the color in paint. Since he had slightly reddish brown hair, and carries it all through. The last thing is lips. You never really see his upper lip. It just sort of disappears under the mustache. So I'm just going to put a bit of shadow there. His lower lip, on the other hand, shows up much more than mine does, and is a little wider than mine. So I'm going to go and make that a little wider. Put some red in. And then, to make that wider look, I'm going to put a highlighter and have the highlighter go out to a wider point than would make sense on my mouth. Oh boy, so long. I think that's about everything. Except for perhaps a little bit of reddish age stipple. Give him a little more color. nose. This is especially good when you've got a crepe hair nose. I mean, not a crepe hair. This is especially good when you've got a wax nose and it's just looking a little bit fake because it's too perfect and even. You can use a bit of stipple and it breaks up the surface. So, yep. Hello, this is Vladimir Illych Ulanov, father of the Soviet Union, and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive.